Good afternoon. My name is Chris Fox, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I became an iPad iPhone developer. Now, my story begins a little bit over a year ago when Apple announced that they were going to be releasing the iPad. Now, when I first heard about the iPad, I was very skeptical. I already had an iPhone, which I loved, but it seemed to me that the iPad was just a slightly larger version with a little bit bigger screen that couldn't be used as a phone. I didn't see a reason why anybody outside of a pretentious hipster would want to buy one. It seemed like the type of device that somebody would just get because they were an Apple fan and bought everything that Apple produced, but that it wouldn't really have any functionality, that it was just an expensive toy. Well, about a month after that, one of my good friends came over and showed me his iPad. And within 2 minutes, I knew that this device was going to change the world. Tablet technology is still in its infancy, but it can already do amazing things. You can watch movies, check your email, type letters, emails, and download literally thousands of applications that you might want to use that'll do just about everything you can think of. And when I realized that this was possible, I also realized that the developers that create those applications are about to embark on a gold rush. They are going to make a ton of money writing applications for the iPad and the iPhone. One of the best known examples is Angry Birds. If you haven't had a chance to play this application, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. But the reason I bring it up is the developers of Angry Birds have made millions, quite literally millions of dollars off of this video game that they've created, the application, which is now available on iPad, iPhone, and Android. They're not alone. There are thousands of developers that are capitalizing on this new trend, making a ton of money doing it. And when I saw this happening, I realized, I've been a programmer since I got out of high school. I have the skills to do this. It's time for me to learn how to program for the iPad and to start making money off my own, just like these guys are doing. The problem is that it's not easy to find a niche that hasn't been tapped into. Just about everything you can think of has already been done. There's apps to do it. So I kind of racked my brain thinking, well, what is it I'm going to be able to create that will actually sell that's not currently being done? And then it hit me. I've played a game called Dungeons & Dragons since I was 6 years old. So for over a quarter of a century, I've been telling stories and sitting around a table rolling dice just like these people here, pretending we're wizards and warriors, eating Doritos, drinking soda, and having a great time doing it. And there are an estimated 15 million people just in the United States that do exactly this every week, that get together to play these games. It's a tremendous amount of fun. We effectively tell interactive stories. So, if you think about a movie like Star Wars, each of the people sitting at this table would assume the role of somebody from that movie. Instead of watching what Han Solo and Chewbacca and Luke Skywalker are doing, you get to play them and make those decisions. Now, these games are a tremendous amount of fun, but they require a lot of prep work. If you're the game master, you have to have access to a stack of books like this. And yes, I've read every one of those books cover to cover. You use these books to give you the information about the game world and to help you craft a story for your players. And it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. Now, I thought to myself, what if I could make this job easier for the game master? What if I could make it fast and effective for you to tell a great story without having to do the massive amount of prep work that is currently required? So I sat down and I started writing an app to do exactly that. And today I'm going to show you what that app is capable of. Now, that application I named the Evil GM's Easy Adventure Kit. And largely because that forms the acronym E.G.E.A.K, which seemed very appropriate for an application for people who play Dungeons & Dragons and similar role-playing games. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you some of what the application is capable of. Probably the most iconic thing that you think of when you see a role player is dice. A lot of what takes place in the game is rolling dice just like these. So the first part of the application that I wrote enables you to simulate those dice rolls. And you can have any amount and type of different dice, and you can go ahead and roll them using the application. And as you can see, it'll auto-total your roll for you. So you can do all of the dice rolling that you need to do as a GM, and instead of toting around a huge bag of dice to do it, It's just one little part of this application. The next part I'm going to show you is the character library. Now, I mentioned before that people assume the roles of characters much like you would in a movie. Well, the players are the main characters. They're the stars of the story, but you as the GM have to run what's called the non-player characters. All the characters, the supporting cast, that will interact with the people in the world. So, if going back to our Star Wars example, I would be playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, I would be playing Darth Vader, I would be playing the Emperor, and I'd be playing all the Stormtroopers. So I need to have at my fingertips a whole bunch of characters. And as a GM, this can be kind of a daunting task. So to simplify it, I created a character library. You can make as many characters as you want, and it takes all of their stats and abilities and automatically calculates them so that it's very easy to run. So we'll go ahead and click on Alyssa here, one of the first ones that I created, and as you can see, it lists all of her skills, attributes, and abilities, all the things necessary to play Dungeons & Dragons. And all this is auto-calculated, so I don't need to worry about it as the GM. More importantly, it gives me a full screen portrait, so all I need to do to show the people in my group what one of these characters looks like is to hold it up and let them look at the iPad. Now, I very much believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I could try to describe to my players what Alyssa looks like, or I can just pass the iPad around, and in my experience, showing them a picture has much greater impact. They have a much greater connection to the character, and it helps build immersion for the story that I'm trying to tell. In much the same way that the characters are able to do that, maps help because players really like to know where they are in a world, and since they're not on Earth, they're in some fantasy game world, they need to know what things look like and what's around them. Well, let's assume that we're playing a fantasy game in Middle-earth, and those of you who have seen or read Lord of the Rings will be very familiar with what I'm about to show you. This is a map of Middle-earth that I can show to my players. And one of the advantages of an iPad is you can do something called pinching and zooming. So I can zoom in as far as I want, in and out, as often as I want, and show my players specific parts of the world. So for those of you that know the world, there's the Shire where the hobbits come from, and here's Rohan where the Riders of Rohan were part of it, here's the Mirkwood. You can see all the different parts of the map and show them to your players. It's enormously handy, and it helps to build that immersion, which is so important when telling a story. Now, there are a lot of other parts to the application, but my time is limited, and I don't want you to sit through a half-hour movie. So I'm only going to show you one more part of the application, and this one is my favorite. It's something that I recently finished and still debugging, but works pretty well, and I call it EGEAK. And what it does is it allows you to connect other devices, iPads and iPhones. So let's just say that I'm sitting in a room playing with my players, and that I have an iPad and they all have iPhones. We can create a Bluetooth network, and I can send messages and dice rolls back and forth over this network. Now, why is that important? I mean, they could just roll the dice on the table, right? It's important because sometimes a player doesn't want other people in the group to know what they're doing, so they want to send me a secret message that no one else knows about. And to facilitate this, I've worked it in the application. Now, what you used to have to do is write down your note on a piece of paper and pass it to me. But the problem with that is that everybody else in the group kind of smells a rat. They know that, the player who's passing the note is up to something sneaky. Well, if you send the message over the application, then there's no way for them to know. So I'm going to go ahead and connect the two devices and show you how simple it is to send dice rolls back and forth. All we have to do is click this connect button down here. And as you can see, it's looking for other iPads, iPhones, and iPods. Now I'm going to hit the same button on my iPad. And almost instantly, you see that the two devices have located each other. And to connect them, all we have to do is click on Arkelius's iPad here. And after a moment, you're going to hear it establish a network connection. Network established. Just like so. So now that the two devices are connected, I can send any information I want back and forth. So I'm going to pass a message. We'll type in hello world. And as you can see, it appeared instantly on the other screen. Now, that's not the only thing I can send. If one of the players needs to make a die roll, I can guarantee they're not cheating because when they roll their die, it'll show it on my screen. This makes it very simple for both players and GMs to track the secret notes I mentioned earlier, to pass important messages, and to send dice rolls back and forth. Now, writing this part of the application was more challenging than the rest. It required me to have an understanding of network packets, of how to send information back and forth between devices. It was challenging to write, but it was a lot of fun and very rewarding once it worked. So there you go. I've shown you some of what the application can do. There are still other features that I'm not going to get into today. Things I know you see the spells button, the punish players button, and the campaign button, but I'll save those for a future movie that I release. For now, I just wanted to get some idea of exactly what it is I'm creating and bringing to market. When this application is finished, it will do everything that a role player wants in an application, and hopefully tens of thousands of gamers out there are going to adopt this, and I'm going to make a little money off of it. But even if it fell on its face, the last 9 months working on this application has yielded me two invaluable things. First, I now have an application that I can use when I'm running my games. And second, I have learned the ins and outs of creating an iPad or iPhone application, which means I can now write pretty much anything I want to. I can go to work for other companies. If there's a business that needs an application created, I can do it for them. I'm uniquely positioned to take advantage of the gold rush of applications that's starting to occur. As iPads and iPhones become more and more prevalent, more and more people are going to adopt them, just like the World Wide Web came to prominence in the late 90s. I plan to be positioned to take advantage of that, and today you've seen a little bit about exactly how I'm going to do that. Thank you very much for spending the time to watch this movie. Please keep an eye out for future movies if you have any interest in what it is I'm putting together. And hopefully this time next year, I will be sitting on a beach in Maui.